Okay.
I'm so impressed with the people who remember. I'm not one of them.
It's always funny to remember like 2 hours later. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I have Eli here. He gets his time on the tablet while we're at Bible study, so he watches construction videos.
That's good.
Okay, I asked him what he wants to be, because sometimes I think maybe he wants to be a builder. No, I want to be a firefighter.
Like Dad.
Yeah. Sure, I'm going to encourage that, but things change, right? After you get to be 35. I had no idea Tom was going to go that direction. Okay, let us read chapter 13. The foot washing. What do you think? Do you want to read all the way to 14?
Sure. It's not all that long.
No, it's not. Okay, so let's just one person read till 20, and then somebody take over 21 through 30, and then somebody go 31 through the end of the chapter.
I'll start.
Gotcha.
Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, he put on his robe and had returned to the table. He said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. I am not speaking of all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but it is to fulfill the scripture. The one who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. I tell you this now before it occurs, so that when it does occur, you may believe that I am he. Very truly I tell you, whoever receives the one whom I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me."
22:30.
21 through 30. Yep.
When Jesus had said these things, he was troubled in spirit and testified and said, "Most assuredly, I tell you, one of you will betray me." Then the disciples looked at one another, perplexed about what he spoke, about whom he spoke. Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples whom Jesus loved. Simon Peter therefore motioned to him to ask who it was of whom he spoke. Then, leaning back on Jesus' breast, he said to him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered, It is he to whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it. And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Now after the piece of bread, Satan entered him. Then Jesus said to him, What you do, do quickly. But no one at the table knew, for that reason he said this to him. For some thought, because Judas had the money box, that Jesus had said to him, Buy those things we need for the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. Having received a piece of bread, he then went out immediately, and it was night.
When he had gone out, Jesus said, Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus answered, Where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow afterward. Peter said to him, Lord, why can I not follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. Jesus answered, Will you lay down your life for me? Very truly I tell you, before the cock crows, you will have denied me 3 times.
Okay. Well, what do we know? What are the things that we know about this, and what are the things that strike us again?
Well, I got totally introduced for the first time that I had been conflating this meal with Passover.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Easy to do. And nobody tells you any differently, really, in any sort of liturgical sense. And we do it liturgically.
Yeah. And we used to, would have the Maundy Thursday, and you'd have the reenactment of the Lord's Supper.
Yeah. Yeah. Not here.
But the synoptics are the first night of
Right.
Passover.
The synoptics are the first night.
They're close, but they're not the same thing.
Right. And that also sort of sends up the little alert flag as we read now John and these final events.
I
To
missed
really
that.
pay close attention to that.
I didn't get what Jane was saying, that is not Passover.
Right.
This one isn't.
Well, then
John is not Passover. It's the day before Passover.
Yeah.
Right. This is
The
not
synoptic gospels are Passover.
the Passover feast.
Passover feast.
This story is not that. Before the festival, it's near but it is not.
Right.
So
how do we make these
sometimes
two
we
connect
call
together?
these synoptics then the first Eucharist, the first communion, and this we call the Last Supper. I mean, there's a big difference in that.
Mhm.
This is not a commemoration that Jesus says, do this like I'm doing this, right? There's nothing in here like that. So that is a very important observation.
Okay, I got you. I think.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And it signifies to us that the events in here are different. And it's just important for us to realize that
Mm.
at the very least, that there isn't just one story. I mean, at the
Right.
very least, there isn't just
Or one witness.
or one witness. The whole bigger picture is just that it's just got so much more color and
Mhm,
um, so many more layers
mhm.
that are fascinating. I actually really did enjoy what how our author did this. I think she did a good job with this sort of using her sanctified imagination and what wasn't there.
So then let me see if I've got this right. So Jesus never celebrated that particular Passover with the disciples
In John,
in John.
the John, right?
Okay. But
Right.
you're saying that in the Matthew, Mark,
Matthew,
just
Mark, and
Matthew,
Luke.
Mark, it
Yeah,
does
it
look like
does
that.
say that they had this
Okay.
sort of and the words that we use, and I think you too use for our Eucharistic words are in those Gospels.
The remembrance of me part?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's he celebrating here then? I don't get it.
He has gathered his friends together. Not necessarily. I mean, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from the world and go to the Father. So everything from now on, you can think about until we get to the Passion. You can think about as Jesus's effort to just pour every single teaching possible into those guys' head. That's what this is doing. In fact, I started a little list because I thought, oh my gosh, let's look at Jesus's list of things to never forget. So number 1 is in verse 14. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. Rule number 1, wash one another's feet. There you go. And look at what that looks like. Oh my goodness. What would, again, wash one another's feet. And you'll notice that whole scenario ends with an I am statement. I am. And it is later added he. That should, I am. Okay. Then I get to rule number 2 over in 34. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You should also love one another. This is how people are going to know that you follow me. So, number 2. So, I got my list going, and I'm going to keep it going through this whole farewell discourse and see what it reveals to me about what Jesus is doing here, trying to tell his disciples everything they need to know, because he's going away. I'm going away. This is what you need to know. That's what this is about. He also says, I'm going away, but I'm not going to leave you alone. So, don't fear about that. The advocate, the spirit, the paraclete, however we want to call it, is with you and will continue with you. which leads one to also understand that the advocate, the paraclete, the Spirit has always been with them. That's not something completely new.
The commentary in my Bible says some interesting things, I think, about
Okay.
the foot washing. It starts with, in the Synoptic Gospels, the final meal takes place on the first evening of Passover. In John, the meal occurs on the evening before Passover begins. The foot washing, not the Eucharist, is the centerpiece of the final meal in John, because for John, the Eucharist is a celebration of all of Jesus' life and is not singly associated with the night of his betrayal. The foot washing welcomes the disciples into the circle of God and Jesus' love. By washing his disciples' feet, Jesus combines the role of servant and host. Jesus welcomes his disciples into his home, his dwelling with the Father.
Yeah,
I'd never thought about it that way, but
that's really good language in there.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to understand the intimacy of this act.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like getting naked. I mean, this is the intimacy here is, and it continues. I want to, so I was taken by Jane Symes' translation of verse 25. Jane, can you read that again, verse 25?
Then, having leaned back on Jesus' breast, he
Back.
said to him, Lord, who is it?
Yep, there you go. Leaning back, that's the closest. Bosom, leaning on Jesus's bosom. And in my RSV, and whatever it is, the new one, it gets a little
updated
bigger.
edition.
Huh? The updated
The-
edition. That's right.
Yeah.
One of his disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining close to his heart. Yeah. And
But she talks about that, doesn't
Yeah.
she?
yes, and that gets completely lost when you read, so while reclining next to Jesus,
Mhm.
that intimacy between Jesus and the one whom Jesus loved is lost. And since it's lost, I think we don't hear that when we did the belonging for Lent, didn't we do that for Lent a couple years ago? That belonging curriculum, and we talked about the woman at the well. Anyway,
Yes.
what this really then points to is that the question, who is the beloved disciple who reclines next to Jesus's heart, who is snuggled up into Jesus's bosom? Who is that? It is every single one of us. We are the beloved disciple. And that because the beloved disciple is never named, right? There is no name attached. It's an inclusive category that
It's also assumed that it's John.
that points to well, and I'm challenging that assumption.
I said assumption.
Yeah, I'm challenging that assumption. And the scholarship, new scholarship says that beloved disciple is every single one of us. And
because we are beloved by God, by Jesus.
Exactly. And so that intimacy that's portrayed there is absolutely astounding.
But people point out that we weren't there physically at that time. And therefore, we're assuming that we're the beloved.
Well, we are part, I mean, that's how we read this sacred scripture, don't we? We read
Yes.
ourselves into it.
Yes,
If we didn't do that, then what would
Mhm.
be the,
we might as well go away.
exactly, there you go, Jane, we might as well throw the book out and
Mm.
say, what does it have to do with me?
Mhm.
I mean, that's why we ask when we're telling
Mhm.
stories with kids, where do you find your place in this story? Who are you here? What character or what animal or where are you in this story? Because you are in this story.
I had never thought about asking my kids that question when I was telling them a story. Where are you? Who are you
Good.
in the story? That's pretty important, I think,
Yeah.
if you are relating back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Never thought of that.
Mhm.
Now it's too late for my kids.
Well, but we do that. I might not do that explicitly with that question with you, but we always are looking to see,
Mhm.
you know, I really feel like Peter. I always feel like Peter, especially in this story.
Yeah.
Peter. Okay, if you're gonna wash my feet, wash all of me.
Mhm.
You know, Peter, the
Or Peter, I'm going to fix it for you, Lord. Step aside.
yeah. And then Peter, I don't know him. Never
Yeah.
known him.
Yeah.
Don't know him. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Peter is my, you know, isn't that
And
our
that's me
lives? It's
too.
my life.
I'm Peter too.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think we all identify quickly with Peter.
Yeah. And when are we Judas? I mean, that's a really scary question to ask.
Yeah.
When are we Judas?
Here's one that's troubled me for a long time. Jesus said, this is regarding Judas.
Mhm.
Jesus says the one who dips
Yeah.
in the bread, or the one I dip the bread and I give it to him. It
Yeah.
seems to me that would be very clear to everybody sitting there who Jesus is talking about, and yet it sounds as if they all miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how much do we miss?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's just maybe there's a lot of hubbub in the room at that point, and or they're all feeling like, well, we're all so close, it couldn't possibly be one of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I just
Or
think,
maybe it's me. Maybe it's me.
yeah,
I mean, that's the other scary
right?
fact, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
It's, I think it's interesting the way our author puts it on page 111, almost to the end of that paragraph. She says, one disciple enters Jesus's arms and another has Satan enter into him. The
Yes.
juxtaposition is a warning to the gospel audience,
That's
that would be
us.
us,
Yeah.
that they will soon have to take sides in the cosmic battle between good and evil.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it goes on to say, they can choose Judas' path, which leads into the darkness of night, or they can be a beloved disciple and stay close to the light of life, even as he goes to the cross.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that
End of that paragraph is just as important.
and that we see in verse 30 right here. So after receiving the piece of bread, Judas immediately went out, and it was night.
Hmm.
So unbelieving
Hmm.
is always in the dark. Those two things go hand in hand in John's gospel. So we have Judas here, who has followed Jesus, been one of the posse for 3 years,
Hmm.
and just can't believe it. And so
I wonder how many of us are like Judas.
Exactly. I mean, that's a question we're afraid to ask, aren't we?
Yeah.
When am I like Judas?
when somebody dies that you love, and you're not sure that they're a Christian, that they love Jesus, it makes me shake inside. I don't want them to go to Satan.
Well, remember, that's not up to you.
I
And
know.
that God's time is not the same as our time. And that God has promised to bring
And maybe God
all
even gives
crea-
another chance to them.
to bring
I'm sure
all
God
creatures
does.
to God's self. And if I don't have faith in that, what do I have faith in? That God has the capacity to bring all creation to God's self.
Yes.
And if we believe what we believe about death and new life, the death of the body makes no difference to our relationship with God.
Yes.
I mean, if we think that person doesn't have a chance anymore, then what do we think about our own death?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, you can't say, I don't think, at least I don't think I can say that I will have a reward of eternal life with God, if I can't also say, after the death of my body, if I can't also say that the one who has turned one's back on God during their earthly life still has a chance to being with God after the death of one's body. I mean, I just don't know how you can ever even do that. Yeah.
What about people who don't believe there's anything more to themselves than this body?
Right. Well, that's
They
God's.
might be in for a big surprise.
Here you go. They're going to end up being at a party they never thought they were going to be at.
And they'll be rejoicing.
Sorry, huh?
And there will be rejoicing in heaven at the return of one sheep.
Yep.
Yeah. Isn't that classically that story?
Mhm.
If it's all about love, it is.
Yeah. 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 So I don't spend my time worrying about those people. I do need
Just yourself, huh?
Well, I do need to do, I mean, and it's not dependent, it's not dependent on me either to always be good and do the right thing. But that's my job and following Jesus is to wash one another's feet and to love one another just as I have loved you. That is in my hands.
And washing your feet is symbolic too of like doing everything for other people to help them, not just feet.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah. How do we wash one another's feet? Of course, it's a metaphor for how we operate in the world.
Oh, and like Peter, everybody wants the whole body.
Yeah, that Peter, so exuberant.
Mhm.
I love his exuberance. And then he misses the point.
Mhm.
That's me.
Yep. He acts before he thinks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jumps out of the boat before he
Yeah.
realizes what he's doing.
That's me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see what else we got in here. I thought she just did such a.
Yeah.
Oh, I like this. I like her connection on page 110, middle paragraph. I think this is a really important connection. We should notice that the action Jesus performs, an intimate foot washing ritual, comes on the heels of Mary's act of washing and anointing Jesus's feet. It is significant that when Jesus models what service and love of one another look like, he emulates a woman's humble act of devotion to him. Mary's actions stand in direct contrast to those of Peter and Judas in this scene.
Go on
Well,
to the next sentence.
Well, Peter resists Jesus's way of service and Judas rejects it. Mary has already fulfilled Jesus's expectations, modeling for all disciples how Jesus serves them and how they should serve each
It's
other.
interesting to me. Peter resists, Judas rejects, Mary fulfills.
Yeah.
All those things that have historically been assigned to women by the church, i.e., cleaning up,
Yeah.
doing the laundry, are all things that men have historically not felt
Yeah.
they needed to do
Mhm.
because they were too good.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
But Jesus took off his robe, put on a towel, and did the servant's duty.
Jesus became a woman
Whoa,
at that point.
son.
in job.
Yeah. Well, in essence, I mean, I think that that's the thing that some church has rejected for bazillions of years
Mhm.
and used as a means to keep women out.
You're right.
But here you have just said Jesus embodies that role. Yeah. I think you've just made an argument for the full inclusion of women in every aspect of ministry in the church.
But everywhere, not just the church.
Yeah, well, there. That's right. That's right.
And it's interesting to me, you saying that, Jane Syme, that we here in the United States who think of ourselves as so open to everything new have not been able to bring ourselves to have a woman president.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's coming. It's going to
Well,
come.
maybe not in my lifetime, but hopefully in
Well,
at
it
least
might
my
be,
granddaughters.
not in a fashion of bullying her directly.
Mhm. Um,
It might come
And
yet.
yet other countries where we look at them and say, oh, they're so behind the times,
mhm.
have been able to do that. We really are very
Think about
self-righteous.
Catherine of Russia.
Yeah.
She was an enormously, not always good ruler, but she was huge. And even if you go back in the Egyptian history, women, they took on the role of men. And some even plastered beards on just to make themselves look like a beard. I mean, a ruler, the men.
There's a great children's book. It's really old now, but it's called, the title was Her Majesty King Hatshepsut.
Her Majesty
Because
what?
the King Hatshepsut.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Because
King
the theory
Hatshepsut was a woman.
was that Hatshepsut was really a woman.
Yes. But she did marvelous things while
Mhm.
she was in power. On the other hand, men have done marvelous things too. So
Yeah.
we can't just raise up women, but
No.
women have been traditionally put down.
Yes, yes.
I have been in the past criticized for having all women up at the altar, all acolytes, Eucharistic ministers, lay readers, et cetera, et cetera. You need to have, you know, you need to make sure, Kathy, that it's equal representation. And my remark has always been, well, up until 20 years ago, it was all men. So we're just going to do this for as long as it takes to make that equal.
To justify it, huh?
Yeah, there you go.
You know, it was interesting to
Not a way
me
to
that
make friends.
the celebration of your ministry, when we all got a chance to come up
Hmm.
and talk about things. And honestly, it hadn't occurred to me how much I was going to miss hearing the Eucharist said in a woman's voice, or how much it had meant to me to hear that on a regular basis, so that it wasn't just a, oh, look at this kind of thing. And the person who nodded the most when I said that was Bishop Lee.
Yeah, well, that's because he's a good guy.
And I thought, well, he gets it. Hey.
And you know how much trouble he got into in the Diocese of Chicago.
Oh, I didn't know.
Oh yeah, they're in the Diocese of Chicago. People either loved him because, oh my gosh, he's lovable, or they just hated him. And that's why he retired. When he retired,
Wow.
he just couldn't put up with the haters anymore. Just didn't do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that, you know, historically, I guess that has been, that and Quincy were very conservative
And
diocese,
Anglican.
very Anglo-Catholic,
Yeah, so hard to make change.
which if you became a Christian at St. Francis House, you never thought the two things were exclusionary,
Right. Well, and
being
I
Anglo-Catholic and being progressive.
right. I never thought so either, but in those little pockets down there, southeastern Wisconsin and some parts of Chicago, very Quincy, very exclusionary. You couldn't have it both ways.
It's interesting to me to see how Eau Claire, that the Diocese of Eau Claire has sort of been changing,
Mhm.
because Eau Claire was
Yes.
when I first joined the Episcopal Church, it was crazy conservative.
Yeah. No,
And
I could never have gotten a job in Eau Claire. I kind of,
no,
no way.
I don't think I could even have been an acolyte in Eau Claire.
Yeah.
But
That's like
now,
the Shore House when I worked there. A woman couldn't even be in the sanctuary.
Did you see that the new dean is a female? There's
no,
Really?
there's huge conversation on the women clergy pages about,
Wow.
because a woman still cannot preside at the Eucharist
at
In
the
the
Shota
Shota
House?
at Neshota House. No,
Oh my
they
gosh.
are fully trained. They all their practical theology and stuff, but they still cannot preside at the Eucharist. And
That's
I
disgusting.
know it is disgusting, which is what, so loads and loads, hopefully things will change now that there's a woman dean at hand, and it's like, well, we'll see. Because
that was my end at the Shota House because, well, I was cooking and there weren't any students coming to be served anymore, so I got laid off. And the reason that there weren't any students was because the bishops that sent most of their people there had come up and risen up that, hey, women are supposed to be in the picture of this place as well and equally. And so they quit sending students. Well, there was no students, nobody to feed.
My my bishop would never send students to Neshota, never. Just completely outside of the realm.
Well, the place was just a job for me. It was not I gotta be what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do, looking back to our book and our author, there's something that really interested me that I thought was worthy of our looking at on page 112. So she's writing about, the farewell discourse and what it is about. And she talks about that it incorporates a variety of ancient genres, Hebrew and all sorts of interesting things. And so at the end of the first paragraph, she says, so despite its redundancy and patchwork feel, the discourse reflects the influence of popular ancient literature. Maybe it's not such a mess after all. And I find that really fascinating because that's one of the things that, in this gospel, things get repeated and maybe repeated a little differently, and maybe too many verbs in the sentence. I mean, there's just all sorts of stuff. And what she's pointing out here is what we 20th and 21st century people value as order, as different from chaos and messiness, because we forget that Jesus, incarnate, is in his very being messy. That's what incarnation means, right? Messy. It has to mean messy. It's bloody and it can be dirty. And I mean, there's all sorts of things about being in the flesh that is very, very messy and chaotic. And so what she's suggesting is that there is the influence of ancient literature, which maybe makes this not so messy after all.
Maybe John understood the pretty modern, I can't think of what you would call it, but the fact that people have to hear things 7 times before
many
they remember them.
Exactly. Which is why it is worthwhile to trace his major themes, because
Well,
he
and
repeats it and repeats it and repeats those things.
Sunday's gospel is from chapter 15, and it's the great commandment again.
Yeah. Yeah. Again. Because, maybe you didn't hear it the first through 7 times. So no, I'll tell you again. Exactly. Well, I've told you about the story about the preacher who would get up in front of his congregation and say, God loves you, and then sit down. Where's the rest? Well, when you believe that, then we can talk about the rest. But I think that's what John does. Believe, John says. Believe. This is it. God loves you. That's what belief is. Now, go and love others.
Where are we going next week?
Oh, goodness gracious.
We were at 111 as the max.
Yeah, so I think we pick up at 111, scene 2.
To the end.
And let's see here.
It's a
what
lot.
she got here.
For as much as we talk.
Well, she covers all of 14. Now she covers all of 14, 15, 16, 17. 14,
In a very small space. So how big is that?
15. And then
It's
after
not that much in the Bible either.
16 and 17. And then what does she do? She must jump to the Passion, right? 13 through 20. Is this the last? It is the last chapter. Is this the last, other than the so what chapter? The final countdown. Oh my goodness.
I
So
think
we
so.
get the passion in here too. Yeah, we don't want to jump into that yet. We want to finish this farewell discourse.
So if we
Okay.
read 14, 15, 16, and 17, which really isn't as much as it sounds like,
Right. Let's do that.
then we're at the betrayal.
And
We
then we'll
stop
save
before
that
that.
for later on. Okay. Okie dokie.
So 11 through 16,
In your book, yep.
11 through
111 through
16.
116. And that encompasses chapters 14, 15, 16, and 17. We can do it.
All right, let me write this down because
And we also then need to seriously consider what's next.
Mhm.
yes, and I was gonna ask if we, especially you, wanted to go through this summer.
You know, I would like to. If you want.
I would like to as well, so
I
To
would
do
too.
what?
If
What,
we
Sharon?
want to
go
continue
through the summer.
Oh,
Continue
keep on doing
Bible
this in the
study.
summer? Is that
Yeah.
what you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah,
but not
Fine
this.
with me.
We do something else, of course.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
suggested, what did you suggest, Jane Korsberg?
Um,
I have it flagged. Where did I put it?
yeah, Bowler,
No, I don't think it was.
no,
If
you,
it was
Bessie then?
Sarah Bessie.
that's
Sarah Bessie, the
her
new
buddy.
one. Field notes, field
Field-
notes from the wilderness. Yeah,
What do you think of that? I did look on Amazon. I think it's still only in hardcover.
Hardcover,
So it's a little more.
and I only have it as an audio.
It's up in the 18 to $20.
oh, okay,
range.
maybe we
I-
should hold
Right.
off on that one.
It came out in February, so I would guess that by next winter, a paperback will be released.
Mhm. Yeah.
I just
Next
love.
Friday is the 12th? Next Friday is the 12th?
Mhm.
10,
I just
20,
love that whole idea that she's writing about there. That I mean, it's like Brian McLaren's We Make the
Mhm.
Road by Walking.
well,
You
she
know,
has lots of other books.
this whole idea that that we are in the wilderness, that this
Yeah.
life is in the wilderness. And
I like this. What I liked about the wilderness is that while it's still a lot of her personal story, it seemed to me to be more relatable to others than some of her earlier works.
okay.
Mm.
Um,
And that might be the thing to wait till it is in paperback and until it's a little less expensive.
Sure.
Do you want to continue to think about, this wonderful sort of intensive study of a book in the Bible? That's been-
I have been enjoying that.
Yeah.
yeah, it's been great fun to do that.
I used to read a lot of stuff from Charles Swindoll. I always enjoyed his work.
I don't really
Well,
know him.
why don't we do this? Why don't we see what bubbles up as to like which Bible
Mhm.
book we would love to study next.
Which book in the Bible?
Yeah,
Is that what?
let's see what bubbles up there. And as we listen to that, then maybe we can make, talk about, is there something like John for Normal People or somebody else who's written something we we can use as a
Sounds good.
guide.
What about the Deuterocanonicals?
A lot to chew, bite off and chew. I don't know that much. Well, I had a professor that wrote the book on who? Obadiah? But that's not Deuterocanonical.
I haven't got the one that's got all of the stuff in it in front of me now, so I can't remember all of the books that are in it, but there's a lot. I remember something about Solomon more than what Solomon wrote with
Yeah.
Psalms and
That's there. Tobit, Judith, additions to Esther, Wisdom of Solomon, Ecclesiasticus, which is Sirach, Baruch.
that book of Solomon just blew me away when I read that.
And I think that, I think that that's all quite interesting. I still have so much yet to study in the canonical books that not
Well,
You still ignore the Deutero.
yeah, I don't ignore them, but
Yeah.
there's
do we want to choose something? I mean, I'm always up for heavy, but not everyone is.
Up for what?
So, heavy.
you want to do
No.
Job? It's as heavy as it
No,
gets.
no, I don't mean like Job. I mean stuff where there's many, many, many layers to chew on. Some people like things a little lighter.
I understand.
And I'm not saying that the Wilderness book is lighter, but I think that book I think would be more appealing to Paula
Hmm.
than something scholarly.
Yeah. And once we move to the new Zoom link, and I start sort of advertising that in the parish bulletin here,
We might get new people.
you might get new people. They're all nice
Well,
people.
how about something like Joshua
Joshua fit the battle.
or
Good.
Judges? You got Ruth as well.
Joshua fit the battle of Jericho.
You know, there are more books for normal people.
There are.
Yeah.
And we've liked the last two we've read and have not found them to be heavy,
Hmm.
very scholarly. They really are for normal people.
Yeah, yeah. Not that
Um,
they're not haven't been well researched. I just really
Absolutely.
think she's done an amazing job
Yeah,
researching and then turning it into something that we can
right. Yeah, I agree. Likewise, the one on Paul on
Mhm.
Romans.
Yeah.
So I could look and see what else they have.
What else is out there? Okay, so we'll do those two things.
Mhm.
We'll kind of see what bubbles up as far as what a book of the Bible might have for us, and Sharon's going to take a look at the rest of the Normal People series and
Yeah.
see what.
Because those are focused on books of the Bible.
Yeah.
Like I noticed last night, there's a Psalms for normal people.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Mm.
sure there many of them are Old Testament. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. I will
Good.
keep the Diocese of Milwaukee and Eau Claire and Fond du Lac in my prayers as they vote.
Please do. I mean,
What
we
is
need
it?
to.
Is there
Here-
controversy?
From. No, just dissatisfaction, I guess I would call it, with how long, from people in Milwaukee, with how long it's taking. I would say people in my own church and one just down the road. This would be TJ and Greg. And that this was a distraction to what really needs to be happening to grow the church.
Can you give me
which
a
is,
quick summary of
Yeah,
what's
let
going
Jane know
on?
what we're talking about.
okay,
Yeah.
so
Oh.
Wisconsin has 3 Episcopal dioceses.
Okay,
The Diocese of Milwaukee, which is the largest
And the lower third of the state,
and the wealthiest.
because it's got
And
Madison and Milwaukee in it.
yeah. And the Diocese of Fond du Lac, which is up along the
Right.
lake
Yep,
above Milwaukee.
yep.
And part of the middle of the state.
Mhm.
And then the Diocese of Eau Claire, which is up along the other lake
Mhm.
and down around the Mississippi River.
Okay,
And but I can't remember which diocese La Crosse is in. Is that in Fond du
Eau
Lac
Claire.
or Eau
That's Eau
Claire?
Claire.
Eau
Eau
Claire.
Claire, okay.
Okay.
So, and that's very small because the majority of it is extremely rural.
Yeah. And they
And-
haven't
And
been able to afford a bishop for a long time.
Yeah, and they can't afford priests and they can't afford, because the congregations are too
Yeah.
little. So, the proposal was made to return to what was original to Anglican settlement in this part of the world with the Diocese of Wisconsin, to merge the 3 dioceses, because the Bishop of Eau Claire retired quite a few years ago, and the Bishop of Fond du Lac was made provisional bishop for Eau Claire. And the Bishop of Milwaukee retired 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
During COVID
3.
still.
Yeah. So rather than go out and look for a new bishop for Milwaukee, the exploration of merging the 3 dioceses has been going on.
Got it.
My guess is it's been bumpier than they would have liked it to be. But this Saturday, the final vote to merge will be taken in
Okay,
a convention, including all 3 dioceses, who
okay.
met in October separately to take votes. And interestingly, the hardest vote came from Fond du Lac. They were not sure they wanted to do this. Eau Claire, the priests I know from Eau Claire, I think feel like they're breathing into paper bags waiting to see
Yeah.
what's happening. And I feel like the people I know from Milwaukee are behaving in very privileged fashion and not thinking about that at all. But I just, it made me decide that I didn't want to go to the convention, which originally I had thought I might like to be a delegate, but
Well, and that criticism has
Hmm.
been true all along, that the Diocese of Fond du Lac and the Diocese of Eau Claire have been afraid that those people in, the Diocese of Milwaukee are just gonna take over, really,
Mhm. Sure.
well, I think that, I think Eau Claire is beyond feeling afraid of that.
They just need help.
I think they just feel like they're not going to exist if something doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Not as a diocese, but as a church.
As a church, yeah.
I think, Sharon, you should have gone.
Yeah.
It might have been a better
Mm.
opposition for good.
Yeah.
I'm praying.
Well, I do think it's a really good thing. I think it's the only option right now. But I really want people in Milwaukee to be hospitable and kind and welcoming.
Would headquarters then be Milwaukee? Or would they designate another
No,
regional?
Milwaukee's already
They have
started
a
to
very
divest.
odd. All three dioceses will keep their cathedrals.
Mhm.
For the interim, at least, the one remaining bishop, the Bishop of Fond du Lac, seems like a pretty decent guy.
He's a decent guy. He's a good pastor, actually. I don't agree with everything he has to say.
No,
but
me
he's a
either, but
Good pastor and what,
yes,
you
yes,
he's
and
a
that
good
comes,
pastor.
I've now been to 2 ordinations
Yeah.
that he's done, and he seems very pastoral.
Right.
So he would be the bishop, but he's nearing or at retirement
Yep,
age as
yep.
well. So nobody would need to feel like he was taking over, because within 2 to 3 years, he's gonna retire.
Yeah.
And then the Diocese of Wisconsin would elect a new bishop. They have it divided up into, I think, 10 regions.
Yeah, I see that they, on the most recent diocesan news, there was a conversation on what those look like.
Yeah. And some of the canons and constitution seem a little strange to me, but they'll work through that.
Yeah.
You know, it's sometimes it's hard to envision what it'll look like until you're doing it,
Yeah.
which they say. I mean, they've been pretty upfront about that,
Mm.
and willing to acknowledge that changes may/will need to be made once we're in the thick of it,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to say, I've been very surprised by TJ's resistance. I
Yeah.
mean, not active resistance, just wanting it all to be over with, and saying that the younger priests in the diocese all feel that way.
Well, don't you have to, I mean, gotta get on with it.
Sounds like the
You gotta
Catholic Church,
follow
they-
the procedure in order to get on with things. You can't just jump over everything, because then other people have.
And nobody's saying you can't, in your individual parishes, do the things you need to do to move ahead. But I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. I know. Sometimes you guys are an odd lot.
That's for darn sure. Okay, oh, come here. Well, come say
Oh,
hi.
Eli.
No, he's not. He's feeling shy right now. He doesn't want to come.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then.
Well, I'm going to say adios.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care, Jane.
bye.
Have a good week.
See you
Thanks.
next
All of you
Friday.
have one too. Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
God bless you.